Hello and welcome to the Run Testers. My name's Nick and this is our full multi-tester review of the On Cloudeclipse. The Cloudeclipse is an all-new shoe from On that uses the same CloudTech phase midsole setup that we first saw on the On Cloudsurfer, although it is quite different to that shoe as we'll come on to in the full review. It costs £170 or $180. We got our samples from this review from Sports Shoes. As always, our review is completely unbiased, but thank you to them for sending the review sample so we could test the shoe. It weighs in at 283 grams or 10 ounces in my UK size 9, and it has a 6mm drop from heel to toe. So you've got a very big midsole stack here, like double the amount you had in the Cloudsurfer, but it is quite a different overall feel to this shoe. You've still got the CloudTech phase cushioning with these series of holes that are designed to collapse into each other on the run to create a smooth transition. You've also obviously got a very big rocker on the shoe, which again is all about improving that transition feel. And then you've got, I think, a slightly firmer version of the Helian SF foam than you had on the Cloudsurfer. It feels firm to the touch and on the run, but that might also be partly down to the fact we've got On Speedboard at the bottom of the shoe there. So the Cloudsurfer was one of the first On shoes not to have a speedboard. It's back in the Cloudeclipse, but it's positioned right at the bottom of the midsole, just above the outsole there, and it basically adds a bit of torsion and stability, especially at the back part of the shoe in the early stage of that rocker. Then you have a mesh upper with some structured elements like this you can see reinforced there to create a slightly more lockdown feel. You've got a really significant heel counter at the back here, and it feels quite stiff and high at the back in general, I'd say, the collar on the shoe. There's a little bit of padding there, but it's noticeable in how much stability I think On has tried to create there to ensure that the high stack shoe doesn't feel wobbly at the back. You've got small sidewalls of foam to that end as well, and then you've got really quite good rubber coverage and a little bit different again to what we've seen from On shoes in the past. You've got substantial coverage at the heel and forefoot, a fairly thick layer of rubber. There is a groove running down the middle of the shoe, which again should aid transition, but it's not the same almost modular pod system you had on shoes in the past. It will still catch rocks though, don't worry, this deep groove at the back can still catch rocks, so if you are worried that On shoes will no longer be able to do that, you can still pick up rocks on your run.
Quick word on fit then. I ran in my regular running shoe size, a UK 8.5, and I found these very roomy overall. There's lots of spacious volume in the toe box and in the forefoot. I had to pay attention to the sort of lacing it down tight before each of my runs. And I did have some slipping in the heel, but nothing crazy, just a little bit more than usual. I felt these might verge on being slightly too long in the toe box, but I don't think it was enough to make me want to half a size down. And unless you've got short feet or you really like a really snug compact fit, I would recommend going true to size in these shoes.
So very happy with the fit of the On Cloudeclipse overall. No issues to report whatsoever. I've had mine in a UK size 8, and that's typically the size that I would go for in On shoes. That's what I've had the Cloudmonster in, the Cloudsurfer, and likewise with those shoes I've had no issues in terms of wearing and running in this shoe. Pretty happy with the space up front of the toes, doesn't sit too snug. As I mentioned in the first run video, I do find that it opens up a little bit more in the front of the shoe compared to something like the Cloudmonster. If you compare it to something like the Cloudsurfer, that has an upper that definitely kind of hugs it a little bit more in terms of how the experience of how that fits. And ultimately, I'm pretty happy in terms of what you get here in terms of support, in terms of structure in the shoe throughout. Padding is generally fine as well, making it suitable, I think, to run a little bit longer in it as well, but also not giving you too much there to keep the weight down in general as well too. As I said, I do think you need to pull the laces in a little bit on top of this tongue to really get a good kind of lockdown, but generally, as I said, it's been very good. UK size 8, it's been absolutely fine for me. I would go true to size based on my experience.
So I found that the fit of the shoe was all good in my normal running shoe size. Like I said, you've got quite a prominent feeling to the heel counter at the back there, but it wasn't uncomfortable or annoying on the run at all. I had a good amount of room in the toe box, and with all this various shenanigans going on with the laces and the extra reinforcement there, I think it was quite a good lockdown fit for me on the run. So yeah, very happy in my normal running shoe size with the Cloudeclipse.
So I've done 50k in the On Cloudeclipse, and I'd say overall my time has been very enjoyable. I haven't had a bad run during that time. I think during that time it's really been about trying to get a sense of where this shoe best works, the types of runs it's going to really excel and be best suited for. Now there are definitely elements of the Cloudmonster here, also the Cloudsurfer, particularly in that kind of midsole and the cushioning technology that On uses on the Cloudeclipse. But I would say my time in the Cloudeclipse, particularly next to something like the Cloudmonster, has definitely been more enjoyable, I would say more memorable, and I think a lot of that comes down to what you're getting in the midsole. Now it's not as firm as something like the Cloudmonster, but also it's not as soft or super kind of squidgy in terms of that midsole, and sinking into something like the Cloudsurfer, it doesn't, that midsole doesn't collapse on you in the same way. So I do think you get a bit of spring back, you do get a little bit of bounce there, but also I think the rocker is really nice in here. And I think when you do run a little bit more up tempo, and the natural kind of inclination of this shoe is to really get you quite reasonably quick onto your toes and get you through the transitions, and I feel like it's felt really nice from that point of view. I was worried it might be a bit heavy, a bit clunky to run in, a little bit quicker, but it hasn't been the case for me in that time that I've had with it. As I said, I do think it can handle my tempo running. Speed work, I think it's out of the equation in terms of this shoe, but I do think you can run a little bit quicker. It reminds me a little bit in terms of, you look at something like the Saucony Triumph, where you feel like that might be a shoe that you can't run a little bit quicker in, but ultimately I do think it works from that point of view. I think it's a similar story in terms of something like the On Cloudeclipse. When I did a longer run in it, again, I do think the shoe is kind of forcing you to run a little bit quicker, just because of what you're getting in that rocker, but ultimately it's been comfortable enough. You're not getting that soft squidgy feel of the Cloudsurfer, but I do think there's enough there in the softness. You can just see pressing through it, it is a little bit softer than what you get on the Cloudmonster, that you do get something that offers kind of comfort as well. My legs never felt bad during those kind of longer runs that I've done in this shoe, and I felt it was well protected overall. So I do think it is a shoe that can handle some longer, slower stuff, but I do think also it has the scopes for you to run it a little bit quicker in it as well. As I said, it's not going to be speed work, just because it's just not there in terms of, I think, the weight and in terms of the snap that you get, but I think there's enough in terms of the ride, in terms of the bounce, in terms of the rocker, in terms of those transitions that you're getting, to make it feel like a more versatile shoe than I think personally compared to something like the Cloudmonster. In terms of other aspects, outsole wise, I mean, there's definitely more rubber here than you're getting on the Cloudmonster. Maybe not so much in terms of the Cloudsurfer, but I'm not seeing any terrible signs of wear. I've been mainly on pavements, been mainly on roads, running wise. I mean, pretty, generally dry conditions. I think I had one rainy run, but grip wise, traction wise, it's been absolutely fine. And I'm not seeing any terrible signs of wear after 50k of running it in this shoe. So for me, I do feel like it's going to hold up pretty well for kind of regular daily training mileage. You maybe just not going to get as much out of it in terms of the outsole that you're getting on Cloudsurfer. But for me, I think as a daily trainer, this outsole feels pretty good overall. So yeah, my experience has been pretty good overall, I would say, in the On Cloudeclipse. As I said, I definitely think it's been more memorable than my time in the On Cloudmonster. I do think you're getting something here that can work for slow runs and can enable you to run a little bit quicker in the shoe as well. And I like the fact that you've got a little bit more versatility. And I think for me, I think it works a little bit better than the Cloudmonster overall.
Now, in my run tests, I've covered around 55 kilometers in the Eclipse. I've mixed up the paces from slow and easy to marathon pace, half marathon pace, and even up to sort of 5 kilometer pace. Most of that was on road. Some of it was on compact river paths. I also put in a 2-hour run to test how they feel over time. On the whole, I've been really impressed by the Cloudeclipse. It offers good step-in comfort. It's definitely roomy, but it feels nice and light on the foot, surprisingly heavier than the Monster though. But it's got a nicely disappearing feel, and I found it cushioned and comfortable from the off. Now, these domino effect Helium foam clouds I think work nicely to provide a ride that's protective, but doesn't sink too much. In my tests, I found it kind of bites back just at the right time. Yes, it's a firmer, more responsive shoe than the likes of the Gel Nimbus or the Ghost Max. It's softer though than the Cloudmonster, but firmer than the Cloudsurfer, though I found it more protective than the Surfer due to the higher stack. There's good roll through from the rocker, though at times I felt like there was a slight disconnect in transition between the different areas of the shoes. The forefoot and the mid to kind of rear foot just somehow didn't always feel 100% in sync. It didn't happen all the time. But sometimes I also had this kind of feeling of hollowness to the clouds, and I think that's like the dominoes collapsing and not kind of coming back. I'm not too sure if it's the foam as well, but it just sometimes feels a little bit off, but it was only very, very occasionally. Now, despite that, in my first few miles straight out of the box, my immediate reaction was that this is the best On shoe I've run in a long time. It's really nicely balanced between cushion and comfortable. It feels light, clippy and responsive. I'm surprised that it's heavier than the Cloudmonster because it runs lighter on the foot. Some max stack shoes feel cumbersome to me. I find myself working to overcome the soft sink that you get from the midsole foams and then kind of waiting for them to come back. But I didn't get that here, at least not until I was on more tired legs close to the half marathon mark or up to that 2-hour mark. In fact, it felt great when I was fresh, and it still gave good protection from foot fatigue later into my 2-hour run. It might even be a shoe that I'd consider doing a marathon in, although I wouldn't be racing a marathon in it. Now, I honestly didn't think that On was going to be able to produce a shoe that could match the new crop of big, lively super foam shoes out there without ditching the Clouds. But I think they're onto something with this Domino design, with that Helion foam. And though fans of super soft Nimbus style shoes might want more pillowy landings than you get here, fans of firmer, higher stack cushion shoes with more response will find a lot to like here. Now, that's not to say this is a firm shoe, far from it, but it's more so than some of the other big stack shoes that we've been testing recently, and I really like that. I think it boosts that faster effort versatility, makes it more of an accomplished daily trainer. Now, I did some miles at 5 km pace, and up on your toes, I think the Cloudeclipse copes really well. There's not as much spring as you get in super shoes, but you can use the Eclipse for faster miles for sure. Now, one regular gripe that we always bring up with On shoes is the fact that you've got these channels that can catch stones, and this back rear channel does that, catches big stones, pretty boring. I also don't entirely know what this plate is doing. I can't say I feel it, though maybe the shoe would run differently without it. It's hard to tell, but I don't think it's really adding that much, and it does hit stones in the middle section, or if you hit anything that's particularly uneven, it's sort of plasticky and it hits.
So I've run 70k in the Cloudeclipse, and I've used it for a fairly big range of training, probably a bigger range of training than I would normally do with a big cushion shoe like this, which at first glance might seem like it's mainly designed just for easy runs, but actually that's not the case at all. When you pull the shoe on or even feel it in the hand, you can feel the firmness there, you can feel the stiffness to the rocker, and that does make it a pretty versatile shoe all round, especially for a max cushion shoe. Like, it's not heavy for a max cushion shoe, but it's also not very lightweight, but it feels lighter than it is on the foot. And actually the first run I did in it, I took it out for like a mini session before a race where I did a couple of 540-mile reps and then some pretty relaxed 200-meter reps, and it can move pretty well for such a big shoe. It actually feels really good when you are pushing quite hard and landing underneath yourself and really, going for it. It does actually feel like a really quite good shoe for that, although I don't know if I'd want to run for extended periods at that kind of pace, or use it as a race day shoe, or do long 5k reps at around marathon pace. It's not really what it's perfect for, but it can handle little fast sessions like that, and I do think it's got quite a daily trainery vibe to it for such a big cushion shoe that does have that versatility to pick up the pace when you want to. Also, I've used it also for a lot of fairly easy and relaxed runs and some steady runs as well, and I did a long run in it in Scotland as well, where the temperature was around 0 degrees. And I'm saying this because I did think the foam firmed up a bit in those low temperatures. Like, obviously I've been mainly running with it in quite low temperatures here in the UK at the moment, but once it did get very low, it feels a bit firmer underfoot, and that in general is quite a characteristic feature of the shoe. It is firm and quite stiff. It doesn't feel like a squishy max cushion shoe when you pull it on, and that might defy expectation if you are looking at it like something equivalent to the Asics Gel Nimbus 25 or something like that. This is not what the shoe is. It's firmer than the Cloudsurfer for sure, and that might surprise people given that it's a double the midsole of a similar design, and yet the Cloudsurfer is the softer shoe. And like I said, I don't think it's all down to the speed board, because it is at the bottom of the shoe there, it's adding a little bit of torsion. I think in general the setup of the shoe is that bit firmer to ensure it's stable, and it does give it that extra versatility. So although it is a bit firmer, I didn't find it harsh. So even when it was stiffened and firmed up in the cold in Scotland, I quite enjoyed cruising through a half marathon in the shoe. It did provide enough protection underfoot, and it rolled through really nicely for me. And that's been the same pretty much in all my runs. Like, I don't absolutely love it, but every run I've done in it I've enjoyed. Like, it's not like I'm going out thinking it's got an incredibly exciting feeling underfoot. The Cloudsurfer I think was really noticeable, so soft and smooth and really fun, but actually this has a slightly more practical feel to it. It is a bit firmer, does give you that little bit more back when you are running at speed, or even running long when you don't necessarily want to be sinking too deep into foam throughout the run. So yeah, all in all I think it's been a really positive run test. I think it's a nice shoe if you're going to be racking up big distances every day that just isn't too squishy and soft, and just gives you a good platform you can work with at a range of paces, ticking over nicely with that rocker. I've also found that the grip's been good. Like I said, on that long run in Scotland, it was sub-zero. I was running like a canal towpath that wasn't too icy, luckily, but in general on wet pavements or slightly frosty pavements, this grip has been good, probably better than I've had with On shoes in the past, and it looks nice and durable too. With I've not made a dent in it at all after 70k. So I had a little period where I was a little bit unsure about the Cloudeclipse, I think slightly because it defied expectations a little bit for me. I have come down quite firmly on the I like this shoe side. I think it's a really nice daily trainer for those who like a max cushion shoe, but want it to still be quite versatile and really like a rockered feel. That's very much key to this shoe's success. I think the rocker works really well. If you're not really enjoying that kind of feeling of a shoe, you wouldn't get on well with this shoe, I'd say. It's also not going to please people who are after a very soft ride either, because it doesn't deliver that, but as a max cushion shoe, that's pretty stable, versatile, feels good underfoot. It's not harsh at all. It's comfortable but not squishy. I think it does a lot of things really well, and I do think it's one of the more impressive max cushion shoes on the market. And another good shoe from On, who I think has had a really good year actually turning around perceptions of its shoes in general. If you look at the other shoes in the On range, it probably does a similar job to the On Cloudmonster in the kind of runs I'd like to do in the shoe as a pretty cushioned daily trainer, but the Cloudmonster has a firmer, stiffer feel. It has a bit more of a snap-through ride, a more traditional ride compared to the rocker on the Eclipse, and I do prefer the feeling of the Cloud Eclipse. I think it's got a slightly better outsole in the way it makes contact with the ground, but Cloudmonster is a little bit cheaper, so that's something to consider. Cloudsurfer I think is quite a different shoe. Like, it is a lot softer, like I say. It's a very smooth ride. I really like that shoe. I think it's great for just mooching through easy runs. If your daily training is more kind of around 5 miles, 10k max, and you just take it at a nice relaxed pace, Cloudsurfer is the better shoe for that. I find it more comfortable and enjoyable to use, but if you're racking up a slightly bigger distance than that, you want a shoe that's got probably a little bit more versatility. Like when I'm marathon training, I'm usually out for more like 10 miles a day and doing a range of runs, and the Cloud Eclipse probably suits that role a bit better because it does have that slightly stiffer feel, which feels a bit better to me deep into longer runs or if you're moving at any kind of speed. Almost a little bit like the Cloud Eclipse has blended the features of the Cloudmonster and the Cloudsurfer into a new shoe that I think works very well. And if you look at the other max cushion shoes on the market, I think the Asics Gel Nimbus 25 is a really well executed max cushion shoe that's got a soft, comfortable ride, a bit of a rocker, feels comfortable, is great for long runs. It's not very versatile, it's not as versatile as the Cloud Eclipse, a bit heavier as well, but it is very comfortable if you are looking for that softer side of max cushion shoes. The Gel Nimbus 25 certainly provides it. I think you've got the Triumph 21 is an interesting shoe. I think it's similarly versatile to the Cloud Eclipse. It can do a lot of runs quite well. It's a good daily trainer, but it's got a higher drop. It's a more traditional ride where you snap through rather than being rockered through, so you can choose between those shoes almost based on that. Do you like a rocker or do you like that snappier feeling that you get with the Triumph 21? And the Puma Magnify Nitro 2 I think is almost in between them. Like, it is a fairly high drop shoe at 10mm, and doesn't have a huge rocker, but the foam's a bit softer than on the Triumph. I think you get a slightly smoother ride from it as a result. I really like the Magnify Nitro 2. I think it's probably the max cushion shoe I'd go for if I was looking at one, because it is a fair bit cheaper and it's got an outstanding outsole, but get a more rocket ride with the Cloud Eclipse for sure, and maybe it's a touch more versatile too. Then a couple of shoes that are a lot softer than this. You've got the New Balance 1080 V13, which is a very soft and squishy shoe. It's a much more, if you're looking at a max cushion shoe and thinking this should be really soft and comfortable underfoot, that's what the New Balance 1080 V13 is, and that is a big difference to the Cloud Eclipse. I much prefer the feel of the Cloud Eclipse myself, but if you want that all-out softness, the 1080 delivers it. Invincible 3 from Nike is a little bit similar. It's much bouncier than the 1080 with the Zoom X foam, but it's got that sinky feeling underfoot. I found the Invincible 3 is a bit clumsy all round, and I didn't love the feeling of it and didn't find it that versatile, a bit wobbly too, so I prefer the Cloud Eclipse to that shoe as well. And then I think the shoe that really is a very strong rival to it though is the new Brooks Ghost Max, which is a really rocket shoe. Highly cushioned, good outsole, not the most amazing foam in the world in terms of bounce or anything like that, but has a good rocker, smooth ride that's comfortable, fairly versatile. It's a little bit heavier than the Cloud Eclipse, but I don't think it loses out too much in versatility, and it's a fair bit cheaper. So I think the Brooks Ghost Max is probably a lot less glamorous than the Cloud Eclipse and how it looks and the excitement around it, but I think it actually does a very similar job, just as well, and I'd probably say it's the better value shoe if you are looking for a very rockered max cushion shoe. Neither of them have very bouncy, lively midsoles, but they both have really well executed rockers, and the Ghost Max is a fair bit cheaper, like I say.
So my verdict on the On Cloud Eclipse is that it's a pretty polished max cushion daily trainer shoe, and I definitely think it is a better shoe than the On Cloudmonster. I would say it's the best shoe or On shoe I've run in this year. I think previously it was the On Cloudsurfer. I think this has kind of upped it for me in terms of offering a little bit more versatility. I think the Cloudsurfer definitely is better suited for those kind of easy paced runs. This has a little bit more about it. I put it in the category of kind of shoes like the Saucony Triumph. I think things like the New Balance SC Trainer V2, less so things like the Gel Nimbus, the New Balance 1080 V13, which I think are definitely a little bit more on the Cloudsurfer realms of kind of those max cushion shoes, different kind of daily trainers. I think this has a little bit more of an up-tempo edge, like the New Balance shoe. But I do think if you are looking for real standout daily trainer shoe from On, as I said, that can handle some slower and slightly quicker stuff, for me, I feel this is a better shoe than the On Cloudmonster, whereas that is the shoe I thought would offer that. I think this is the shoe that does offer that. And I think, it's been really good. I know I wouldn't have any qualms picking this shoe up again and using it long term, because I do think it has been a shoe overall that I've enjoyed running in. I didn't think I would say that, but it has been a good time running it on Cloud Eclipse, and it's this, I'm interested to see where On take this shoe next more than anything. I think Cloudsurfer as well, which I think that was the biggest step in terms of where On needed to be. As I said, my time has been very, very good in the On Cloud Eclipse. I like what On have done with this shoe, and overall I think it's a very good max cushion daily trainer with that kind of versatile up-tempo edge to it too.
Verdict then, well, for me, the Cloud Eclipse gets a big thumbs up. I really like this shoe. It's like a Cloudmonster Cloudsurfer hybrid, a surf monster if you will, and I think it works. For a max stack shoe, it's surprisingly nippy and versatile. It's almost got that easy rolling rocker ride of the Monster, but with some of the more compact precision and agility that I find in the Surfer. Overall, for me, the Cloudeclipse ride is smooth, it's energetic, and it's a lot of fun to run in. It's definitely an easy shoe to log long miles in. It's one of those shoes that I find myself reaching for a wide range of efforts as well, and definitely when I don't quite know how I'm going to run that day, because it has the versatility to cope with a wide range of paces. Now, the only thing I don't really like, if I'm being honest, is the price. At £170, yes, it's still cheaper than the Nimbus 25, but could the cheaper Surfer 7 or the Monster cover the same kind of runs? I'd say in most cases, probably. If you're okay with a firmer ride, the Monster probably does the same job for £20 less. Then one final word here. As ever, it's a really good looking shoe, at least I think so, though mine have been destroyed, and I think this dual layer mesh is going to be impossible to get clean once it's dirty. So yeah, you've been warned.
Okie dokie, that's our review of the On Cloudeclipse. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Thanks again to Sport Shoes for providing the shoes for this review. We've got a link to the Sport Shoes website in the caption below if you want to check it out there. Please do like and subscribe, ring the little bell, and we'll see you next time.